Hi, I'm me, your favorite Agent Random. Actually, I do believe that this is going to be the channel launch, so hi. Pleasure to meet all of you. I'm Agent Random, your local hobo content creator, as in I have no channel. So expect most of my videos to wash up on the shores over here at BlackJupiter. I'm a huge fan of The World Ends With You and probably some other games, so expect me to not shut up about those when I'm around. Anyway, Neo The World Ends With You released not too far back. I've been overjoyed to see this game blossom into something great. Seriously, Neo is phenomenal. You can trust me when I say that because I'm definitely not biased. Neo also gives me a plethora of things to theorycraft with. It's a whole new game stuffed with so much new lore. But what I want to discuss today is how Neo The World Ends With You compares and contrasts to its predecessor from 2007. We'll be taking a look at the various things that both games try to do and see which game does them better. This is less of a review and more of a critical comparing and contrasting. There will be no concrete spoilers for either game, but I will be talking about the way major characters were written and commenting on character arcs. Gameplay footage will not show any plot details beyond what was shown in trailers for either game. So don't worry, if you haven't unlocked Ninjini from Skylanders Giants and Neo yet, I won't be showing any footage of her. Now let's divide our games into two halves. Each of these halves put together to make the full experience that we got to play. These two foundational pieces are the story and characters and the gameplay. Both of these affect the other, but for right now, we'll be looking at them individually. In the original DS game, the player actively controlled two characters at once. Neku on the bottom screen and his partner on the top screen. I'm pretty much going to be using footage of Final Remix here, which puts them both on the bottom screen and changes how the partner works, but for right now, we're just gonna kinda pretend that they ain't there. Neku's attacks are these things called pins. Each pin is activated via a different method. This game allows you to defeat enemies by tapping, slashing, dragging, circling, shutting the DS. The possibilities are endless. This on its own would be a unique combat system. However, things get really interesting when you add the top screen into the mix. Here you have a partner who is controlled through the D-pad. All you have to do is tap left or right a number of times until they reach the end of these branches. But at the end are these cards. Depending on which partner you have, there will be different kinds of cards. And the reason to choose a card over another will vary. One character may ask you to select 3 specific cards, while another asks you to do math, all while you're still screaming into the microphone so that Neku hits the enemies. And there's this light puck that goes in between the two characters, giving each boosts, asking you to constantly divert your focus back and forth. Oh, and they share a health bar too, so you have to be making sure that they both avoid different kinds of attacks at the same time. Sounds like a lot, right? That's because it is. This is not an easy combat system to even understand at first, and will take you a good while to get good at it. That of course does not mean that it's bad in the slightest. It just takes a while to learn. The ports of this game did streamline things a fair bit. There you only have Neku to control, and his partner is relegated to only having one attack and is really just a glorified pin. And instead of needing to divert your attention between two different people at once, the light puck is effectively replaced by the cross combo system, where two characters need to hit the same enemy in tandem or at the same time. Now, Neo takes both of these combat systems, creates a fusion, and then makes it even better. It takes how you controlled multiple characters at once and allows you to control up to 6, all sharing one health bar. But each character only has one attack. But there's an extra layer of strategy that you couldn't get from the original. In Final Remix, I tended to pick pins for Neku that worked well with whoever my partner was at the moment, since they had a set input and I wanted to be able to easily chain attacks with them. In Neo, you can decide everyone's pins. This means that you can build your own playstyle based around how you think it's most effective to chain together combos. And it's so much smoother and fluid now. Everything just feels so satisfying, assuming you're not slowly dying in a dive mission.
I miscalculated.
Holy frick. All in all, Neo's combat is just more fun. And that's why I like the original's combat better. But wait, doesn't that just go against everything I just said? Foolish viewer, I was merely setting up that expectation so that I could subvert it later. But to understand why I feel this way, we'll need to look at the other half of this game, the characters and story. If you've played both games, you'll know that the Neo protagonist Rindo is no Neku. Neku's character journey is hands down one of the best in all of gaming due to how much it can easily relate relate to almost any player. He goes from being a shut-in and constantly lashing out at others to someone that really values people. Almost anyone has isolated themselves before, especially in their teenage years. So this just spoke to people. On the surface, Rindo's character is just as relatable. He's not the most social, but not as overly emo as Neku was. Instead, Rindo can best be described as passive. He doesn't like to make his own decisions or take any agency in his life. When he doesn't know what to do, he always just Googles it. He's easily influenced by those around him, like the online account Another, which Rindo states he couldn't do as much as decide his next meal without. This creates conflict in the plot when he legitimately does disagree with the decisions of his team, but doesn't have the agency to make his own. This often leads to stalling and stalemating. This is a pretty good basis for a character. You'd have everything that you need to make Rindo be just as strongly developed as Neku, but Neo does not. They don't even come close. That's not to say Rindo is a bad character. He's still well written. It's just that Neku was really well written and has a high standard to keep up with. But what specifically did The World Ends With You do that Neo just didn't? Well, these two games are fundamentally written differently. The World Ends With You has a plot written around character, while Neo has a plot featuring character. Every single aspect of The World Ends With You was done in order to strengthen and reinforce Neku's character arc, like the people that he works with. A bubbly and overly kind girl to illustrate a contrast with Neku, a really annoying boy that tests Neku yet shares many traits and beliefs with him to show how far Neku's grown beyond that, and my boy Beat, who shows Neku's mastery with working with different kinds of people. The game's main antagonist, Megumi Kitaniji, also enforces this. He's a dark and exaggerated parallel to Neku down to the headphones in both of their designs. Without spoiling the game, his plan is built on the same core concepts that Neku's worldview was. Every step of Neku's journey was meticulously built in order to create the best story for him. Neo, on the other hand, is pretty much none of that. The characters in his party do contribute to his character arc, no doubt, but they aren't built around it like Neku's partners were. And the closest parallel Kitaniji has in Neo, Shiba, doesn't really mean anything in relation to Rindo's character as far as I can tell. If you go into Neo expecting Rindo's character to be executed anything like Neku's, it'll probably seem unfocused. There are very few select scenes that are specifically for Rindo's character growth, but that's frankly not unique to just him. Most characters and most stories are like that. But this goes deeper than just the story. The original game heavily featured ludo-narrative storytelling. This is essentially when the gameplay and story work in tandem to reinforce one another. All of those unique quirks from the DS game I mentioned earlier, that's the game's ludo-narrative storytelling. The gameplay's hard to grasp at first because that's what it's like for Neku to work with other people. There are mechanics in the game that give your pins experience for time you aren't playing the game, telling you to go out there and interact with the real world. The game had a Street Pass-esque feature where you could connect to other devices and trade items, allowing you to use the game as a way to reach out to others. If you're interested in hearing more about this, I'd recommend this video by Games is Lit 101. Neo, as I explained earlier, refines that original gameplay, but because it took its gameplay from Neku's story, it just doesn't carry any meaning in Rindo's story. What does controlling a team of players and chaining together combos say about Rindo's struggle with passiveness? Nothing, it's just a fun combat system. Does that mean Neo The World Ends With You is a worse game? I don't know. For me, yeah, definitely. The way the original gameplay and story interact is so unique, and it strengthens the game's plot like nothing I've seen before. That is more than enough for me to prefer the original, but objectively, it really comes down to preference. The other day, a friend of mine had finished the original game and expressed that they felt like the story only happened towards the game's final act, with everything prior being filler. After some discussion, we deduced that they didn't really care for Neku's character arc that much, which the game is sorta heavily built upon. They said that they wanted to see a higher emphasis on plot, not character. And while I don't agree with that, there's nothing wrong with that, and Neo seems to be a step in that direction. Also, a lot of people just prefer games that are more fun, which I've stated that Nioh is. Nioh's story and characters are still good, and they do a great job supporting the gameplay and plot. So the things that Nioh lost from the original game may not matter to most people. So really, it just comes down to preference on what we all value in games. The World Ends With You is not objectively better than Nioh, and Nioh is not objectively better than The World Ends With You. In fact, I have a good feeling that the strengths that Nioh possesses, being a more accessible and fluid combat system, will be what has the strongest chance of this series ever getting anywhere close to being popular. But at the end of the day, both of these games have strengths and weaknesses when put next to each other. Each game serves a purpose and is wonderful in their own right. Oh wait, this one has fret. Never mind, this is better.